You're listening to Two Bobs, conversations on the art of creative entrepreneurship with David C. Baker and Blair Enns.
All right, Blair. So finally, you showed up.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Let's get this over with.
We should have had a contract where we each pledge equal contribution to our two Bobs, not 1.5 plus half. It's 1 plus 1.
Your interpretation of my very rich life is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you've been, quote unquote, writing a book, whatever that means.
Some of us suffer when we write.
Yeah. You bleed through the fingers and through your ears. So you're writing this book, quote unquote, which nobody has seen yet, and there's no independent external validation of this. But you're writing the book. So finally we get to record an episode, and I, as well as the listeners, have every expectation that this will be worth the wait. This will be really good. So then you send me this outline that says the emotional journey of buying and selling, and it looks so academic. I'm thinking, wait a second, what is going on here? All I could think of when I read this outline, which is very interesting to me and also somewhat confusing. So I'm interested. I figure I'm going to leave here in a half hour knowing a lot more than I know right now. But all I could think about was The Price is Right. Do you have that show in Canada?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have TV in Canada?
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
So there's somebody who's never been on TV before, and they're presented with an option that says, all right, you can keep everything you've earned and go home with this, or you can risk it all for the opportunity to win a lot more.
Hold on. Are you sure that wasn't Let's Make a Deal?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Never mind.
That was Monty Hall, who is from my hometown of Winnipeg, Canada. So, yeah, we have television and television stars in Canada.
This is unnecessary detail at the moment. Back to my story. So the crowd is always yelling for somebody to give up everything they've earned and go for the big thing, of course, because it's not their money.
Yeah.
And the person sitting there is thinking, oh, I don't know. Like, that's kind of at the crux of some of what you're talking about today, right?
Yeah, and there's a modern version of that show, or somewhat modern, Deal or No Deal. There's this idea known as choice theory. How do people make choices? In 1979, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky wrote a paper in Econometrica on prospect theory. This is why it's academic, because I actually went back and read the original paper. I've read all the books that talk about it, even Kahneman's book.
Right.
And in the last month or so, people keep throwing prospect theory in my face, or at least that's the way it's felt to me.
Yeah.
People are starting to extrapolate this theory, which we'll talk about, into sales. And they're saying things that are kind of proven to be true by this theory, but they seem to be these blunt instruments or generalizations that don't work in sales. And I've heard some people who should know better make these generalizations around how prospect theory applies to sales. And I want to clear it up.
So the title is The Emotional Journey of Buying and Selling. And we're talking a little bit more about understanding the emotional portion of buying. I'm just as interested in the emotional journey of selling too. How do we want people to listen to this? What in particular are you wanting them to walk away with? And then we'll get into the details.
I think I want to explain prospect theory because it's been out there long enough and it's kind of almost pop science now. Explain that it's a little bit more complex than people understand. I'll identify the one thing people should take away from prospect theory when it comes to applying it to selling. And then we'll take that one thing and walk through the emotions of the buyer, the emotional kind of roller coaster that they go through when they're buying, and talk about how to properly apply prospect theory in a sale.
What I took away from this, and tell me if this is accurate or not, was that you could come to basically a perspective of the buyer's journey and make some big, broad, sweeping statements. And what you're saying is that the buyer's journey is more of a journey and not just one thing in time, and that different parts play a different role at different places in that journey.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Some of the generalizations that you hear about prospect theory, and I've said them myself, and they're generally true. The idea that people value losing something about 2 to 3 times as much as they value gaining something. But then at other times you will hear, and I read the other day, the statement that people place more weight on perceived gains than on perceived losses. Well, how can that be true if what I just said, the fact that